Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Dark Souls 2 Crown of the Ivory King. Yes, it's rather odd that they made a DLC solely devoted to the star running back of the New York Jets, currently floundering New York Jets no less, so odd timing on that, but yes. And I should remark, that is the only Ivory thing I could think of off the top of my head, so if you'd like to submit an opening for Crown of the Ivory King, submit it in the comments. I'll give you full credit. I don't want to work for this anymore, because let's face it, folks, aren't we kind of at full Dark Souls 2 saturation? Or actually, that happened months and months and months ago. The timing of this video coming out is way past the date of any and all relevance. It's completely pointless, but I'm a completionist. I've streamed all of Dark Souls 2, all of Dark Souls 1, not Demon Souls, because fuck consoles, frankly. I gotta finish it, and it's not a feeling of obligation. I'm not doing this because I feel like I have to. I legit think that this, Crown of the Old it's not old, I'm sorry. Iron King was old. Ivory King is, I'm assuming, middle-aged. Hang on. It's strange, my doorbell functions exactly the same way as this. It's kind of anachronistic, I suppose, but in any case. Ivory King, he's either middle-aged or a youngin'. Hard to say. When you encounter him later on, though, you might find he's a bit spry. Spoiler alert. So, Crown of the Ivory King is a bit less linear than its two counterparts. You can go off the beaten path a bit if you want, though I would not recommend it. I'm assuming this is possible, but unlikely. So the previous Delicious, you could not fight the bosses until near the end of their respective Delicious. Here you can just go right in, but as you can see, the vowel-heavy king's pet, Ava, is rather not... Okay, I'm really glad that happened, because it looks really silly. BuzzFeed, you have a new GIF. It's kind of off the top. I always struggle on the pronunciation. Do choosy moms choose GIF, or is it GIF? I think GIF is what the cool internet folks go with nowadays. But yeah, you can go that way, you can try to beat off that boss, but it ain't gonna happen. Now I suppose if you're MLG Pro Strat Souls playa, and you have like the pattern down where you can kind of close your eyes, jack into the Dark Souls matrix, and predict the boss's movements without being able to see the boss, without being able to see the king's pet at all, maybe you could beat the fight. Maybe. I have not watched any streamt speed runs of this, with the Delicious included, but I don't know, maybe if you really know what you're doing, you can fight that boss without... I'm kind of going off on a bit of a tangent. So you may notice, mechanically speaking, you can't toke up the torch when you go outside. That is what we call in the business a gameplay mechanic, and try to keep up with that, folks, because there are some gameplay mechanics in this delish. Okay, so I noted in the beginning that it seems a little less linear Now you may be thinking, excuse me, Beatus, but you're kind of full of the shit. Because sure, you can go fight that boss, but then later on, you're just going along a singular path, am I right? And I would say, first of all, shut up and get out of my commentary, because I'm busy. I'm recording something for you peons. And second, I would say you're absolutely correct. That's true. I probably spoke too soon. This footage I'm talking over, I actually recorded this. I played through the Delish once, got an idea of, you know, how it works and everything. Then I went back and did it a second time. To, you know, so the gameplay that I talked over would be, not necessarily funky fresh, but not too meandering. And that's my personal theory as a old school Let's Play. I'm just not of the mindset that, you know, the day one blind stuff. There are people who can do it, okay? I'm not going to cast everyone in a bucket, but the people who do usually do it are kind of garbage people. Okay? I don't know why that tickled me right now. It's one of those days, folks, let's face it. Anyway, out of all the Delicious, I have to say this is probably my favorite of the three. I like the scenicfulness. There's probably a better word for that, but I like the scenicfulness of it all. I think the area is interesting. It doesn't feel quite as claustrophobic as Crown of the Old Irony King did. Sunken King, I barely even remember at this point. Who cares? But this is solid. I like the snowy aesthetic. The enemies are, you know, it's kind of a consistent Delish thing. You kind of get the same-ish number of enemies. But to be fair, that's kind of common in any area of Dark Souls that you come across. In any one area, there's a few different enemies. It's not the entire game. I can look past that. It's fine. But despite coming from the south, I like this whole snowy shit. This DLC takes place in what I believe is Minneapolis. I've never been there, but I picture it looking something like this most of year-round. Polar Vortex, hashtag. It's a 2013 thing, actually. It doesn't make sense. The enemies are relatively straightforward, though. You got your archers, you got your ranged people to think about, you got your up-close melee guys to think about, but they're all kind of icy night bros who move swiftly, and who often come with crystal back, also bros. And that's the thing in Dark Souls, I believe, is that these enemies, I don't think have names, aside from the labeled bosses, who you clearly see they have their name tags. I'm assuming that is what their business cards look like. I know my business card has Diabetus with a very lengthy life bar under it. Not that I'm compensating for anything, that's just how I roll. Okay? But you got the crystalline backlining crystal knight guys. I'm assuming that is how they're denoted in the gaming manual. Those guys, you can't backstab, I don't think. Not that I would try it. Because why bother? And, you know, in New Game Plus, you get the occasional red phantom enemy. I've never been a big proponent of New Game Pluses, unless it's for Chrono Trigger, of course. In my top 5 ever. Video games. Not just things, but video games specifically. Chrono Trigger in my top 5 things, period. I'd probably have a problem, but top 5 games, for sure. Chrono Cross, you know. But the New Game Plus thing, that is where I dig it. By the way, that will not be there later. FYI. See, I'm simulating the exploring experience. Now, first time I played this, I spent the longest time looking at that chasm. That's incorrect for chasm. and contemplating, is there a way to jump over that? Is there a platform that pops up? Because in the Sunken King, there was a platform that came up and helped you get across a gap. I puzzled over it for years. Until I moved on and later found out the error of my ways. But I just like this DLC. It feels like, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but it feels like there's a little bit more of an exploration element to this particular era, to Illinois. And to me, it's more like Illinois, because it's a pretty nice area. Okay, that's the LP commentary on the game, not just my gameplay. Okay, that's why you folks are here. All right. It just feels like there's a little bit more. I don't know. It's probably some snobby bullshit that no one cares about. Look, it's a game where you explore some shit, figure out the enemies. You learn by dying, whatever. You know the Dark Souls formula at this point. No one cares. There are no viewers anymore. I've accepted that. Most of you watching have already played this. Or you just need to fall asleep at night, so you decide to put this on. And if you're falling asleep to this, I might scream in any given moment. You ever think about that? To people who fall asleep during Let's Play videos, what happens when the LPer yells? Or like, say something really scary is about to happen and I want to simulate a first-time playthrough experience. Is that what you want? To have a faux scream haunt your nightmares as you're falling asleep to it? I don't think you do. I don't think you do. Okay, so I'm killing those ghost Halloween dressed magey people. Spoiler alert, they're magey people. I feel like it's hard to explain my strategy here without spoiling too much later on. But this Delish does something rather unique compared to the other two. So you might note you're like the torch, it doesn't light outside. There's what obviously looks like frozen treasure chests that you cannot melt with fire arrows. No matter how much you might stand here and read messages about torches and think there's some kind of torch thing involved, when there is in fact not. And struggle to think why. But that, again, is what we in the biz, that's short for business, cash for business, what we in the biz call, and you heard this earlier, gameplay mechanic. Dramatic pause. It's very cold outside. So cold, in fact, that the Halloween ghost-dressed people, also that's their name in the manual of this game, I checked, they don't move. They just sit there while you stab them to death. It's not particularly fair, but here's what I'll say. I'll be kind of vague about it. There's an element to this DLC, to this Delish, and please ignore my current gameplay performance while I explain this critical information to you. There's a gameplay mechanic that will necessitate going back through pretty much the entire Delish again for a second time, but with some changes. But if you're a true pro at this game, you know about bonfires. I sometimes call them bonefires, as a little joke. But you may know you can rest at these bonfires. You can revive your hip at these bonfires. When you do that, enemies revive. But if you know that coming into this Delish, if you're an experienced Delish player, and you're just wily enough, if you're just Dr. Wily enough to go through this Delish and never rest it on bonfire, only light that shit for perhaps later teleportation use, and you go through the Delish again, you can do so without having to encounter any of the enemies. You can streamline the experience quite well for yourself. And that, my friends, is why you watch this. That's the MLG speedrun tactic that I recommend, and probably am the first and only person to do that, and I've copyrighted it. So see, here's what I mean about needing to come through this delish again. You got 4 torches and you have a door. Spoiler alert, the door. There's no key, there's no notification. There's no, like, door is locked or door is jammed or door opens only from the other side. There's nothing. So what that means is that we have one of, I think, 2 situations in Dark Souls 2 where the torch is useful. Where the torch actually has some kind of very necessary utility, which is why this character, this Karak, has been picking up some torches in the game. In the DLC. I think. I should just confess I haven't been watching any of the footage this whole time. Not keeping up with anything. But here's a little instance of going on a short side path that you might not normally encounter, and you get a grand reward for your curiosity. And I should say that most of the enemies in the Delish I've discovered in my countless hours of Dark Souls playthrough, except I think this enemy is the exception. Poison is king. Poison is king, not Crown of the King. There's a lot of poison in Crown of the Sunken King, as I remember, but poison is, for the most part, not here, but for the most part, super effective against enemies. Dark Souls 2 requires bow usage a bit more than its predecessor. But regardless, going off the beaten path, the beaten off path a little bit to find some treasure. So this is when From was like out of ideas for armor at this point. So they just kind of, maybe they visited Philadelphia, or they just really were thinking about their bell covenant one day. Like, you know, we don't have a bell that you put on your head. It's a bell hat. Okay? I mean, what do you say about it? I think this helmet like if you're shot in the head somehow with an arrow, or if something maybe falls on your head, I believe it reduces or negates that damage. I say with a question mark, not sure if that's true or all. But I'm sure I think it has some pretty hefty defense as well. So if you're a believer in bell fashion, and you have a date at the Belfry, then you want to wear that. So that was part 1 of Crown of the Old Ivory King. Next time, more Crown of the Ivory King. Wow!